From Keene in the Shire, the Liberty Media capital of the world, this is Daryl W. Perry, host of FPP Radio News for Thursday, February 11th, 2016. Silver is trading at $15.57 per ounce. Gold is valued at $1,233 per ounce. And according to BitcoinAverage.com, the average price of Bitcoin is $381. Antiwar.com reports earlier this week the Levantine Front, a faction that holds a small amount of territory in northern Aleppo province, began complaining that they are fighting on several fronts, facing the Syrian military advance along with the Islamic State and Kurdish pressure on their respective frontiers. While most of their focus in recent days has been on the Syrian military's offensive in the area, on Wednesday it was the Kurdish YPG that was moving against them, taking advantage of Russian airstrikes and an off-balance rebel force to attack the Manag airbase. The reports indicate that while pushing toward the base, the YPG is also aiming at the village of Kafar Nia. Kurdish officials have suggested their goal is to take more or less the entire Aleppo province border with Turkey, which mostly belongs to the Islamic State, but which includes this strip of territory as well. Russian warplanes are said to be providing air support for the YPG offensive, a shift since the group usually depends on the U.S. coalition for help. With Russia's focus on helping the Assad government, however, they likely figure that bolstering the Kurds at the expense of a rebel faction is a step in the right direction. For nearly 40 years, Roberts & Roberts Brokerage has been a trusted source for buying and selling precious metals like gold and silver. They also take Bitcoin for precious metal purchases and have permanently removed the minimum purchase amount for all orders paid in the digital currency. Call Roberts & Roberts today for knowledgeable advice on buying and selling precious metals and a forward-thinking approach to new technologies. 800-874-9760 or visit online at rrbi.co. UPI reports Iowa's Supreme Court has agreed to hear a challenge to the state's ban on voting by convicted felons. The move comes a day after Maryland granted voting rights to felons through an override of Governor Larry Hogan's veto. Meanwhile, in Kentucky, newly elected Governor Matt Bevin overturned the previous governor's executive order issuing such rights in December. Iowa's state constitution bars people convicted of an infamous crime from voting. A 2014 ruling by the Iowa Supreme Court muddied the water in terms of what constitutes an infamous crime. The lawsuit, brought by the American Civil Liberties Union, seeks to clarify the meaning of the term. ACLU voting rights lawyer Julie Ebenstein told MSNBC, Iowa's criminal disenfranchisement law permanently deprives citizens, like our client Kelly Griffin, of their fundamental right to vote. Lifetime disenfranchisement is destructive to democracy and to the re-entry efforts of citizens who have served their sentence, which in Kelly's case was a term of probation. We're encouraged that the Iowa Supreme Court will hear our case on this significant issue. Iowa, Florida, and Kentucky are the only three states with such bans. The two Democratic presidential contenders, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, have expressed interest in doing away with them. Clinton introduced a bill to allow felons the right to vote during her time in the Senate. Late last year, Sanders hosted a criminal justice reform panel in Iowa where one speaker called himself a second-class citizen because his criminal record did not allow him to vote. When her plush and comfy life suddenly and unexpectedly fell apart, Brooke and her dog Cloud set out to defy the odds. If this is a man's world, as they say, living on the streets is no place for a young woman. One day she awoke in the redwood forest and realized she had become a hobo, and would ultimately come to know exactly what it means to survive. How to Be a Hobo by Brooke Willett is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores. Reuters reports federal agents on Wednesday closed in on the last four occupiers at a national wildlife refuge in Oregon after a 40-day armed occupation protesting federal land control in the West. The FBI said that no shots had been fired and that negotiators were continuing to end the standoff at the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge in remote eastern Oregon without violence. The FBI said the latest confrontation began after one of the protesters was seen riding an all-terrain vehicle outside the encampment. A number of occupiers were relating their accounts of events as they unfolded via an independent internet broadcast called Revolution Radio that is known to be sympathetic to the occupation. They said FBI agents had moved to within 50 yards of the occupier's position in the compound, and when reported seeing FBI snipers on a nearby hillside with high-beam vehicle lights trained on their compound. Sandy Anderson said that federal agents were trying to coax the protesters out of hiding, but added, "We're not leaving without our weapons." This has been FPP Radio News, online at fppradio.com.